So did those orders just drop and now you're headed to beautiful Dover Air Force Base here in Dover, Delaware? But first you have to answer that age-old question, should I buy or should I rent? And don't worry, I got you covered here. In this video, I'm actually going to go over some of the pros and cons between buying and renting. And some of the reasons may not be as obvious, so you definitely want to stick around. But after watching, you'll definitely have a lot more insight on whether buying or renting is going to be the right decision for you while you're here at Dover Air Force Base. If you're new to my channel, welcome. My name is Windom. I help people buy and sell homes here in Delaware. I've lived here my entire life, and on this channel, I go over exactly what it's like living here in the first state, Delaware. And if you're thinking about making the move here to Delaware or potentially selling, I'd love to have a conversation to see if it made sense for us to potentially work together. I'm gonna leave all my info in the description down below. Now that we got all that out the way, let me give you what you came here for and let's jump right into it. So let's start out with renting first. We'll start with the pros and then we'll hop into the cons. Now, one of the first pros that you have with renting is that there is no long-term commitment. Now, that's not to say there isn't any type of commitment. Here in Delaware, the usual rental contract is about a year. And there are some situations where you can do month to month, but typically if you go that route, they're gonna charge you more. Your rent's gonna be a little bit higher. But that may be a good option if you're in one of those career fields where you're only gonna be here maybe a year or you're not gonna be here very long at all. So that's definitely something to consider. So number two is gonna be less responsibility. So you're renting, you're just responsible for general upkeep and keeping the house in a reasonable condition. So it's just the typical things, you know, keeping the house looking nice. Obviously, you're not gonna punch any holes in the wall or anything like that. You're gonna keep the house in a reasonable condition, pretty much the condition it was in when you signed the rental agreement. But what that does mean is that, say, you know, it's the summertime and the AC goes out and it's 100 degrees outside, you don't have to worry about that. Or if a toilet breaks and it starts to leak, you don't have to worry about that. All you do is contact the property manager or the landlord and they're going to schedule someone to come out and fix that. So, you know, no mess, no fuss. So, I mean, hopefully it's in a timely fashion, but it will get fixed and it's not going to come out of your pocket. You're not going to have to pay for those repairs. All you're going to do is let someone know, they're going to come out, fix it, and you're good to go and you don't have to worry about anything. And number three is save that money. Now, this one is specifically for military, obviously, but you get a BAH. So what you can do is you can intentionally go out there, look at your BAH rate, and then look at what the rentals are going for, and then you can decide, hey, I'm gonna grab this rental that's significantly lower, or maybe it's just a few dollars lower than your BAH rate, but you're gonna be able to pocket that money. And depending on your situation, you could actually maximize this. You know, if you're by yourself, you may find, you know, a little one bedroom because you don't need a lot of space. Or if you are by yourself and you got some friends and some roommates, you can get all them together and then you guys go in on the rent and, you know, $1,800, $1,500 split 2-3 ways is a lot cheaper than just by yourself, and then you get to pocket all that money. So now let's jump into the cons of renting. Number one is that it can be unpredictable sometimes. And what I mean by that, times are always changing, whether it's a pandemic, it's the rates changing, it's inflation, it's something. Depending on that situation impacts the rental market quite a bit, and maybe the rental you already live in. Now, depending on the situation, the homeowner may look at his financials and do some reevaluating. And when he does that reevaluating, he may decide that, hey, I need to raise rents to market value, or things are just becoming too expensive for me and I need to raise these rents. And now what you got into and you thought was a sweet deal may not be as sweet anymore. Or it might be a great time in the market to sell and that owner decides, well, hey, you know what? I'm tired of being a landlord. This sucks. So they decide to go and sell the house and they give you notice. And because of that, you're going to have to find a new place to live. And depending on what the market is like, you might not be able to find such a great deal for a rental. And the next big con is no equity. This is a big one for me because I'm all into equity, generational wealth, those type of things. And for me, rent is purely transactional. You're giving an amount of money to have somewhere to lay your head. You gain absolutely nothing else except for shelter. So if you're renting a home that's pretty much all your BAH, or if you live on base, it's a wash because they're taking all the money. You don't get to save that money and put it into anything else like an investment or anything that's going to give you any type of return. I mean, even if it's an experience or anything, you don't get anything. You're taking the money that the government's giving you to pay for housing, you're using every cent of it on housing. So now let's just do some quick math. So if you were going to rent here around the Dover Air Force Base area, it's about $1,500 a month. And let's just say that you stayed at the duty station for 3 years. So if you do 1,500 times 36 or 3 years, that's gonna be $54,000 that you paid in rent. You got absolutely no return on that money, and you probably paid down someone else's mortgage or helped someone build some type of wealth, and that's not a bad thing, but it's just something that you need to be aware of when you do rent. And the third con of renting is rules and restrictions. You got to remember, you may be living there, but you're just renting that property. It's not yours. Someone else owns it. So there's going to be things that you're not going to be able to do that you could potentially do at a house if you owned it. So it might be something as simple as you can't have cats, or you can't have dogs, or maybe you can't have a certain breed of dog, which is one that you see a lot. If you're someone who likes to customize your living space and make it feel like home, you may not be able to paint. Or if you have a lot of stuff, you may not be able to add shelving or anything like that when you're talking about that property, or you're gonna have to get permission in order to do it first. So even if you do get that permission and they say, cool, go ahead, the owner may tell you that, hey, when you leave, you gotta repaint, or you gotta make sure there's no holes in the wall, to where as though you need to return that property in exactly the fashion you received it in, essentially. So now that we went over the pros and cons of renting, let's get into buying. So again, we're gonna start with the pros again. So the first pro we're gonna talk about is building wealth and equity. So remember how I told you when you were renting, nothing is gained, it's purely transactional? Well, the opposite is true when you buy. Now, when you buy, things are moving to your advantage. With every mortgage payment you make, you're paying down principal. And it may be low when you first start, but it's still paying down what you owe to the bank. And then that compound effect I'm talking about is actually appreciation. So appreciation is the amount of value your home goes up every year just because of the market conditions. And then on top of that principal that you're paying down, you're gonna get the compound effect of appreciation as well. And here in Delaware, you can expect about 3 to 6% appreciation yearly. So again, let's just do some quick numbers so you can get an idea of how powerful this could be. So you just bought a home, let's say you spent about $350, which is around the average price point you'll see around here. And then let's just use 4% appreciation, that middle number. So for a $350,000 home, every year you could expect about $14,000 in appreciation every year. So again, let's just use the same numbers. Let's say you're here at Dover Air Force Base for about 3 years. That would be $42,000 that you just gained in equity from just owning the home, doing nothing else. All you did was own it in time past. So what you can do differently now is then when you leave, you could potentially access that equity in the form of a cash out refi or potentially a home equity line of credit. And then the kicker is that you get to keep the property. So then you could rent it out and make money that way. Or if you decided not to keep the property, you could just sell it and then access all that money tax-free in order to move on to your next journey of where you're going and potentially buy a house at your next duty station, or if getting out, do whatever you want with it. The second pro for buying would be that you get to leverage your BAH and the VA loan. Now, the VA loan is a great way to build wealth through real estate. And the VA loan is a great program. It's 0 down payment, and typically you're gonna see a lower rate. And when you take that VA loan and then you combine that with the BAH you're getting from the military, essentially they're buying you a home. They're buying you an asset. They're gonna give you this money regardless whether you decide to buy or rent. So you can use that now to purchase an asset that you can have control of and do whatever you want with. And the beauty of this is that you can do it multiple times. And something that I'm actually surprised about is the amount of military members that I talk to that actually don't know that you can use your VA loan more than once, and you can have more than one VA loan at a time. Now, granted, there are some requirements, but it's a very common practice you see among military and clients that I've helped with the VA loan. And the third pro is that it's your house. You can do what you want with it. You own it, so you don't have to answer anyone. You want to have 3 dogs, 2 cats, and a goldfish? Go right ahead. You want to paint the inside of your house neon green? Sure. You want to rip up all the carpet in the house and replace it with hardwood? Let's get it. The main thing I'm getting at here is that you're not going to have to ask anyone for permission to customize your home because it's yours. You do what you want with it. So anything that you deem necessary to make your house more comfortable, you can go ahead and do it. So number 4 are tax breaks. So whether it's the deduction you get for the interest that you pay, or if you decide to go a different route and get even deeper into the real estate rabbit hole, you start looking at things like depreciation and other tax breaks that you could potentially take. Again, I'm not a CPA. You're definitely going to want to talk to them and see all the ins and outs, but there's a lot of tax breaks to be had for real estate. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and say it's all sunshine and rainbows whenever you buy a house. There are cons to it, and potentially it may not be for everyone. So let's get right into them. Number one, it's going to be a bit more complicated to move when you do get that next duty station or you decide to get out. Unlike renting, when you PCS, you're not going to be able to just grab all your stuff and your lease contract and be like, I'm out. There's a lot more moving parts when you own a home. You're going to have to make a decision on whether or not you're going to want to sell this home, or do you want to go the route and potentially become a landlord and rent it out? And depending on what you choose, you're going to have to follow the processes that go with each. Number two con is going to be risk. Real estate is a great investment, but like everything, there's risk involved. So unlike when you rent, current things like the market or inflation or rates or maybe developments in the immediate area, you're not going to be paying attention to those type of things when you're renting a home. But when you buy, best believe you better be paying attention to what's going on in that area in the current state of real estate. So number three is going to be more responsibility. Obviously, it's your home, so you're responsible for it. So again, if something breaks, like the AC goes out or a toilet starts leaking, you better head on down to Home Depot, or you're going to have to call somebody to fix that, and you're going to have to pay for it out of your pocket. So you're responsible for everything in that house and everything that goes along with it. You're talking about lawn maintenance, power washing the home, any type of upgrades you want to do, anything that may go wrong with that home, you're going to be responsible for it. There's going to be no one that you're going to be able to call to do it for you. You're going to have to take care of it. And there are some things that maybe might not come to mind at first when it comes to home ownership. You got HOA fees, taxes, pest control, things that might have just been taken care of when you rented, but now that you own, they're your responsibility. So overall, renting works well for some people in certain circumstances, and buying works well for some people in certain circumstances. It's going to depend on your specific situation and then your goals. What are you trying to achieve? But now you know some of the pros and cons that come with either buying versus renting here at Dover Air Force Base. So now that you do have a better idea and you know whether you want to buy or rent, you might be wondering to yourself now, Brandon, where are the best places to live in Delaware? And don't worry, I made a video discussing that right here.